We have received word that music legend Ozzy Osbourne has died. Osbourne, as you know, pioneered.
He was struggling for a long time. So if you get a debilitating disease like Parkinson's and just...
Rock legend Ozzy Osbourne is gone, and the world is reeling. But it wasn't the headlines that broke people. It was what Sharon whispered at his casket. A private message, 4 haunting words, and a tearful confession that silenced the entire room. Why was she begging for forgiveness? Who was the mysterious woman Ozzy secretly left $80 million to? And what dark secret did he try to confess just 72 hours before he died? This isn't just another celebrity death. This is a love story wrapped in betrayal, a legacy hidden behind sealed letters and missing millions, and a final act that might change how you remember the Prince of Darkness forever. Because the real story, the one Sharon never wanted to tell, it's finally coming out.
Ozzy Osbourne wasn't supposed to go out like this. Not quietly, not in the middle of the night, not without one last scream into the void. For decades, he was chaos in leather, the wild-eyed frontman of Black Sabbath, the man who bit the head off a bat on stage and laughed through decades of addiction, rehab, scandals, and superstardom. He was unbreakable, or so we thought. But on a calm, almost too quiet morning in Los Angeles, everything changed. At 75 years old, Ozzy slipped away in his sleep. No tour buses, no press releases, just Sharon by his side, holding his hand as his breathing slowed and stopped. For fans around the world, it was like the lights went out on an era, the final note of a song they weren't ready to stop playing. But for those closest to him, it wasn't a surprise. Not really. Because in his final weeks, Ozzy wasn't just fading. He was saying goodbye. He stopped taking his meds, refused therapy, spoke less and stared more. The man who once howled across stadiums now barely whispered across the breakfast table. Sharon noticed it first, the change in his eyes. Not fear, not pain, just calm sadness. And that's when things started happening. Quiet things. Things that would only make sense later. Ozzy called each of his children in one by one. No cameras, no assistants, just hushed voices, tight hugs, and the kind of silence that says more than any lyric ever could. But what Sharon saw one night would haunt her forever. She walked into their bedroom to find Ozzy alone, holding an old photo of the family in the 90s, back when life was chaos, but love held it all together. Tears streaming down his face, Ozzy looked up and whispered, "I'm sorry for what I couldn't fix, but thank you for staying." Sharon canceled everything, interviews, appearances, even work. She stayed by his side every second from that moment on. And just days later, Ozzy was gone. No lights, no encore, just peace. But that peace wouldn't last long, because what followed? His funeral, the secrets in his will, and Sharon's final words would shake even the most diehard fans to their core.
For a man who lived under the spotlight, Ozzy Osbourne's funeral was the opposite of everything he'd been known for. No screaming fans, no all-star tribute, no press. Just a hidden chapel in the English countryside, a few rows of chairs, and a guest list so tightly controlled that even some of his closest industry friends were turned away at the gate. That was Sharon's decision. He gave the world everything, she reportedly told the family. Let us have this one moment, just for us. And so, one of the most legendary rock icons of all time was laid to rest in silence. But inside that chapel, inside those 45 minutes, something happened. Something no one was prepared for. The eulogies weren't about Ozzy the performer. They were about Ozzy the man, the husband,
the father, the broken soul who tried and failed and tried again. Jack Osbourne stood up first. He didn't hold back. He spoke openly about the years Ozzy was absent, lost in fame, addiction, and ego. But then he said something that made even the toughest rock legends in the room wipe their eyes. "Just a few weeks ago," Jack said, "he pulled me aside and said, 'I wasn't always there, but I never stopped loving you. I never stopped trying to be better.'" Jack ended with a whisper, "You did your best, Dad," and that was enough. Then came Kelly. She talked about their shared pain, how she inherited both her mother's fire and her father's chaos. She revealed a final voice note Ozzy sent her just 2 days before he died. "You've got your mom's fire and your dad's madness. You're unstoppable. I love you always." The entire chapel was silent, not out of politeness, but because no one could speak without breaking. And then Sharon stood. No speech, no notes, no tears, at first. She walked up to the casket, placed one hand on it, and simply said, "This wasn't supposed to be the end. But maybe this is the peace you never found in life. Sleep now, my darling." Even the priest had to pause to collect himself. Then, as the casket was lowered into the earth, a solo violin began playing a stripped-down version of "Mama, I'm Comin' Home." It was Sharon's choice. She said it was the only song that ever made Ozzy cry every single time he heard it. And that was it. No grand finale, no fireworks, just the sound of wind in the grass and the quiet sobs of a family saying goodbye. But outside that chapel, a storm was already brewing. Because when Ozzy's will was unsealed just days later, everything changed.
Everyone expected Ozzy's final wishes to be simple, predictable. Sharon would inherit most of it, the kids would get their shares, maybe a charity donation or two, and that would be that. But when the legal documents were unsealed, what emerged wasn't a family farewell. It was a detonation. Ozzy had rewritten his will just 5 months before his death, without telling Sharon. And the changes? They weren't just surprising. They were explosive. Sharon, though still listed as executor of the estate, received significantly less than expected. She retained the shared properties, the royalties, the image rights, but over $80 million had been quietly placed in a private trust. The beneficiary? A woman named Margot. No one in the Osbourne family had ever heard the name before. No friends, no industry insiders, not even Sharon. Whispers began immediately. According to insiders who spoke under anonymity, Margot wasn't just a random figure. She was allegedly someone from Ozzy's past, someone tied to a secret relationship he maintained in the late 1980s, during one of the darkest periods of his addiction. And it didn't end there. Inside the will was a handwritten note, undeniably Ozzy's signature at the bottom, addressed to "my son." Not Jack, not Louis, not any of the children the world knew. This was someone else. "I was never the man I should have been for you," the note read. "But no one will silence your truth now. You're my blood. This is your legacy too." The implications were devastating. Ozzy had a son the world never knew about, a son Sharon never knew about, and now he was legally named a part of the Osbourne legacy. Sources close to Sharon say she was furious, not just at the betrayal, but at the secrecy. She reportedly considered challenging the will, but under UK law, a properly notarized and witnessed document trumps everything. Ozzy had made sure it was ironclad. But this wasn't just about Margot or a hidden son. Another $30 million, completely unaccounted for, was found missing from an offshore account in Ozzy's name. Gone.
No trace, no paper trail. Insiders suggest he may have quietly gifted it before his death, perhaps to fund medical treatments, perhaps to support the hidden family, or perhaps to hide something else entirely. The fallout was immediate. Some of his grandchildren were reportedly left out entirely. His longtime friend and bandmate, Zakk Wylde, not mentioned once. Even former managers and producers, names who built his career, received nothing. And just like that, the family was in turmoil. Lawsuits, media leaks, secret depositions, all while Sharon was still in mourning. But even with the world reeling from the contents of the will, the most chilling moment was still to come. Because what Sharon revealed next was something no one could have expected.
It was just one day after Ozzy was laid to rest. No glam squad, no stage lighting, no press junket. Just Sharon Osbourne, alone, in front of a single camera, pale, exhausted, and visibly changed. This wasn't the polished TV host or the steely rock wife fans had come to know. This was a woman crushed under the weight of something she couldn't carry anymore. What she said in that interview didn't just shake the Osbourne legacy, it split it wide open. She began with the obvious, the grief, the pain, the hollow quiet of losing the only man she'd truly loved. But then, she paused. Her voice dropped. She said that in the final 72 hours of Ozzy's life, he asked for something strange. He wanted everyone out of the room. No nurses, no family, no monitors. Just her. With trembling hands, he reached for hers and whispered something she said she'll never forget. "I did something, years ago. Something no one ever found out about. If it ever comes out now, just know I'm sorry. I didn't mean to ruin everything." Sharon froze. She said he looked afraid, not of death, but of judgment. When pressed by the interviewer about what he meant, Sharon hesitated. She didn't give details, but she gave a timeline. A party, 1989, a friend who went missing. A night Ozzy always swore he couldn't fully remember. Online speculation exploded instantly. Some fans believe he was referring to a long-buried incident at a UK nightclub, the night a roadie connected to Ozzy's crew vanished without a trace. Police at the time labeled it a probable runaway. But now, with Sharon's vague confession hanging in the air, people weren't so sure. Was Ozzy involved? Did he witness something? Did guilt gnaw at him for decades? Sharon wouldn't say, but the look on her face said enough. And then she dropped another bombshell. Ozzy, she revealed, had been plagued by nightmares for years, visions of a faceless figure chasing him, calling him James instead of Ozzy. James, of course, being his legal first name, John Michael Osbourne. It was like someone was trying to strip the legend away, trying to drag the real man, my man, into the light. He often told her, "I hope God doesn't recognize me as that man. I don't want to go to hell." It wasn't a metaphor. He meant it. In those final days, Ozzy wasn't afraid of death. He was afraid of who he had been while alive. But the confessions didn't end there. Sharon revealed that Ozzy had written a series of sealed letters in the weeks before he passed, one to each of his children, and one addressed simply, "To the one I hurt most." She doesn't know who that letter is for. She hasn't opened it. Not yet. But perhaps the most haunting revelation? Ozzy left behind over 60 hours of video diaries. Not interviews, not promos, personal tapes, raw footage of him talking directly to the camera, ranting,
crying, confessing, as if preparing one final message to the world. Those tapes are locked in a vault. Sharon says she has no intention of releasing them, but Netflix, HBO, and even the BBC have already made offers, some in the tens of millions. And fans? Well, they're begging to see them. Was Ozzy trying to make peace? Was he warning us? Or was this his final act of rebellion? One last scream into the void from the man who never went quietly.
Ozzy Osbourne always played a character. The eyeliner, the snarling vocals, the crucifixes and cryptic lyrics. Fans saw a performance, a carefully crafted image of the Prince of Darkness. But what if it wasn't just an act? Because in the years leading up to his death, Ozzy started slipping in interviews. He'd mutter strange things, talk about the voice that never stopped, mention someone always watching him from mirrors, whispered that he didn't know if he was still alone in his own body. Most people laughed it off. Drugs, old age, rock star brain fog. But those close to him weren't laughing. His personal assistant of over a decade reportedly quit after claiming Ozzy would wake up screaming in Latin, even though he didn't speak the language. House staff claimed furniture moved on its own. Cold spots followed him, and his studio, no one would go in there after sunset. Even Sharon admitted in one rare podcast that she once heard two voices coming from his room, both male, both angry, but only one Ozzy inside. Then there was the infamous 2019 Vatican trip. It wasn't publicized, no cameras, no fanfare, but according to leaked travel records, Ozzy flew to Rome under a pseudonym, accompanied not by family, but by a priest and a therapist. He met with someone high-ranking in the church. When asked later why he went, Ozzy reportedly said, "I needed to see if I was still redeemable." That same year, a leaked studio demo made its way onto Reddit. It was quickly removed, but not before some fans transcribed it. The lyrics? "He's under my nails, he's under my skin, he wears my face, but he's never been in." And the title? Possession. Some now believe it wasn't just metaphor. Some believe Ozzy thought something else had taken hold of him, and that whatever it was, never truly left. Even his longtime bandmate, Tony Iommi, once joked in a 2021 interview, "Ozzy's not just haunted by his past. Sometimes I think he's literally haunted." Was it mental illness, guilt, or something darker? Whatever it wasn't going away. And in those final months, Ozzy became obsessed with recording himself at night. Security footage, audio logs, even mirrors covered in Post-it notes. On one of his last podcasts, he said something that still haunts fans. "Sometimes I wake up and I've been talking, but it's not my voice. I don't even recognize the words." A pause. "I think I let something in back in '84, and I don't think it ever left." What happened in 1984? That's the question Reddit has been trying to answer for years. Some say it was tied to a now-lost album that was scrapped mysteriously mid-production. Others believe it's connected to a ritual Ozzy once described jokingly in a 90s interview. Something about calling on the old gods for inspiration. He laughed at the time, but fans aren't laughing anymore. Especially not after Sharon's interview and the tapes still locked in the vault.
Ozzy's death shocked the world, but what came next shocked his family. When his will was read, it included the usual: property, royalties, memorabilia, and instructions for funeral arrangements. But buried in the last few pages was a handwritten amendment, signed and dated just 3 weeks before his passing. The handwriting didn't look like his. In fact, experts hired by the estate said it didn't match any known samples of Ozzy's penmanship, past or recent. It instructed that a sizable portion of his estate, nearly $18 million, be placed into a trust. The recipient? A person no one in the family had ever heard of. The name? Alpheus Ward. No address, no ID, no history. Not even a record of the name anywhere in Ozzy's past business dealings, travel records, or contacts. Just a line that read, "He gave me my voice. I owe him this." Sharon reportedly lost it in the room. She demanded the clause be thrown out. The lawyers weren't sure what to do because the signature matched legal standards, even if it made no sense. But that wasn't the end of it. 2 days after the will reading, a woman claiming to be Mr. Ward's representative showed up at Ozzy's private mausoleum with paperwork. She wasn't listed as family, she wasn't media, but she had credentials that allowed her access. Security footage shows her spending exactly 66 minutes alone inside. No phone, no flashlight, no tools. Just a briefcase. When she left, guards said she was crying and laughing at the same time. No one has seen her or heard from Alpheus Ward since. Online forums exploded with theories. Some said it was Ozzy's final prank. Others say Alpheus Ward is a pseudonym for an old friend, maybe even an alias Ozzy himself used in darker times. But then there's the wildest theory, that Alpheus Ward wasn't a person at all. Reddit threads dug into ancient folklore and found references to an Alpheus, a spirit said to grant musicians inspiration in exchange for something precious. You can guess what that means. And the word ward, it's an Old English term for a protector or someone who guards something sacred or cursed. A name no one recognized, a fortune redirected, and a line scribbled by a man who may not have been fully himself anymore. I gave you my voice. Whatever Ozzy left behind, it wasn't just a musical legacy. It was a mystery still unfolding.
Ozzy Osbourne's career was legendary, but there's one chapter fans have only heard whispers about: the Lost Album. Back in the mid-1980s, Ozzy was working on a project that never saw the light of day. The tapes mysteriously disappeared, and the masters were never released. Rumors say the recordings contained lyrics so raw, so dark, that the record label demanded it be shelved forever. Some say Ozzy himself pulled the plug, convinced the material was cursed. And now, decades later, those tapes have resurfaced, locked away in a vault under Sharon's control. The vault where the video diaries also rest. But it's not just lost music. Whispers among insiders suggest there's a series of audio recordings, some just snippets, others hours long, that capture things no one could explain. Voices that aren't Ozzy's. Sounds that sound like conversations with someone else. One leaked clip made its way online for a brief time before being scrubbed by copyright claims. In it, a shadowy voice asks, "Are you ready to pay the price?" Ozzy responds, barely audible, "I've been paying forever." Fans analyzed the clip frame by frame, trying to discern what was said next, but the audio cuts out. Speculation runs wild. Is this a recording of a ritual? A confession? Or just Ozzy playing with studio effects? Sharon refuses to comment. She's vowed to protect the vault's contents until the time is right. But the offers keep coming. Netflix, HBO, the BBC, all fighting for rights to the tapes, promising to tell the real story behind the Prince of Darkness. And fans? They're desperate for answers. Because if what's on those tapes is true, it could rewrite everything we thought we knew about Ozzy Osbourne.
Ozzy Osbourne's final chapter wasn't the bombastic, chaotic exit many expected. There were no wild parties, no last-minute confessions blasted across tabloids. Instead, it was quiet, intimate, full of love, regret, and secrets buried beneath decades of fame. Sharon's whispered words at the casket weren't just a farewell. They were a keyhole into a complicated soul, a man who wrestled with demons, both real and imagined, and fought to be better until the end. The hidden son, the missing millions, the mysterious Alpheus Ward, these aren't just scandalous headlines. They're puzzle pieces in a story still unfolding. And the sealed letters, the video diaries locked away, the lost album, they promised truths the world wasn't ready to hear. Ozzy Osbourne wasn't just the Prince of Darkness on stage. He was a man chasing peace and a life that never gave him rest. So as you remember him, ask yourself, what part of Ozzy will you hold on to? The wild rock star? The haunted man? Or the father who begged forgiveness in silence? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If Ozzy's story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the lives behind the legends. Because sometimes, the loudest stories are the ones whispered when the music fades. Rest in power, Ozzy Osbourne. Your storm will echo forever.